The silver leaves of Ethelmore whispered secrets Ilara had never been meant to hear. She stood at the edge of the sacred grove, her belongings wrapped in a threadbare cloth, watching the clan elders turn their backs with practiced disdain. The morning mist clung to the ancient oaks like ghostly witnesses, and the air smelled of dew-soaked moss and bitter finality. "You are no longer one of us," High Priestess Silvarin declared, her voice crystalline and merciless as winter ice. The silver circlet on her brow caught the dawn light, a symbol of the purity Ilara would never possess. "Your bloodline taints our sacred soil. By sunset, you must be beyond our borders, or the hunters will ensure you never defile another elven sanctuary." Ilara's hands trembled, but she kept them hidden in the folds of her worn traveling cloak. She had known this moment would come. 23 winters she had endured their contempt, their sideways glances. The children who threw stones while their parents looked. "Away, half-breed, mongrel, abomination!" The words had carved themselves into her soul, deeper than any blade. Her mother's face flickered in her memory. Beautiful Isoldea, with her honey-gold hair and eyes like woodland streams. She had died defending Ilara from a shadow beast when Ilara was only 7, taking the creature's poison to save her daughter. The clan had mourned Isoldea for exactly 3 days before forbidding anyone to speak her name again, as if love itself could be legislated away. "I understand," Ilara said quietly, surprised her voice didn't break. She met Silvarin's gaze, noting the flicker of something almost like relief in those ice-blue eyes. They wanted her gone. They had always wanted her gone. She turned without another word, her pack heavy against shoulders broader than any full-blooded elf. That was her orcish heritage showing through, the strength she'd learned to hide behind hunched postures and oversized clothes. Her skin bore the olive-gold undertone of her father's people rather than the porcelain pallor of her mother's. Her ears tapered to elegant points, yes, but they were slightly thicker, stronger. Beautiful by orc standards, monstrous by elven ones, the forest path stretched before her, winding into territories she'd only heard about in warnings and children's tales. The Wild March, they called it. Untamed lands where ancient magic still pulsed through the earth, where creatures of fang and claw ruled without the civilizing influence of the great kingdoms. Perfect for outcasts and exiles. Ilara walked for 3 days, rationing the small amount of dried fruit and whey bread the clan had grudgingly provided. At night, she climbed into the crooks of massive trees, using skills her mother had taught her in secret. Isolde had known this day would come, had prepared her daughter as best she could. On the 4th morning, Ilara woke to the acrid smell of smoke. Not cookfire smoke, but the thick, choking stench of burning villages. She descended from her perch, her heart hammering against her ribs, and followed the smell to a ridge overlooking a small settlement nestled in a valley. War had come. The banners told the story in violent colors. Black and crimson flags bearing the sigil of the Shadowfang horde clashed with the silver and green of Ethelmore's border patrols. Bodies littered the ground like broken dolls. Women screamed. Children ran in panicked circles. And at the center of it all, an orc warband tore through the defenders with brutal efficiency. Ilara's blood sang. That was the only way to describe the sensation. Something primal and fierce surged through her veins, demanding she act. Her muscles tightened, her senses sharpened. She could smell individual soldiers from this distance, could hear the specific pitch of terror in each cry for help. She had spent her entire life suppressing this part of herself, denying the warrior's instinct, the battle lust, the raw physical power that would have labeled her irredeemably savage in Elven society. But these people were dying, and she was the only one who could stop it. Ilara dropped her pack and ran down the hillside. Her body moved with a fluid grace that combined Elven agility with orcish power. She grabbed a fallen sword, its weight perfect in her grip, and crashed into the fray like a summer storm. The orcs never saw her coming. She moved too fast, struck too hard. Years of restraint exploded into devastating action. She fought with a precision that would have made any warrior proud, but with a ferocity that spoke to her hybrid nature. She was neither fully elf nor fully orc, and in this, because I'm building an army, Drakorian said bluntly, not of dragons, but of the forgotten, the dismissed, the ones who don't fit into neat categories. The war coming will reshape these lands, and I intend to protect what matters. But I need warriors who fight with their whole hearts, not half-heartedly. You fight like someone who's been holding back their entire life. Imagine what you could do if you stopped. The offer hung in the air between them, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. To stop hiding, to stop apologizing for existing, to embrace both halves of her heritage without shame. It sounded like a fantasy too good to be true, and if I refuse? Ilara asked. Drakorian shrugged, the gesture surprisingly casual for someone wearing a crown. Then I'll ensure these villages are protected, and you'll continue wandering the Wild March until either hunger, beasts, or raiders kill you. You're strong, Ilara, but survival alone is not the same as living. I'm offering you a chance to be more than a survivor. Before Ilara could respond, a young girl broke from the cluster of villagers and ran toward them. She couldn't have been more than 8, with tangled brown hair and eyes wide with urgency. "Please," she gasped, grabbing Ilara's hand with surprising strength. "Please help us. My brother is trapped in the burning house, and no one can reach him." "You're strong. You could save him." Ilara looked toward the village, where one structure still burned. Smoke poured from its windows, and she could hear the faint sound of crying from within. The villagers stood helplessly by, clearly afraid to enter the inferno. She didn't think. She just moved. Her legs carried her toward the burning building, her cloak abandoned midway. Heat slammed into her as she kicked down the door, and smoke immediately stung her eyes. But her orcish constitution made her more resistant to harsh conditions than a full elf would have been. She could endure this. The crying came from upstairs. Ilara took the steps 3 at a time, her lungs already protesting. She found the boy in a corner bedroom, no more than 6 years old, curled beneath a collapsed beam. The ceiling was moments from caving in completely. Ilara grabbed the beam with both hands and lifted. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she channeled every ounce of her orcish strength, every bit of power she'd kept locked away. The beam rose, inch by agonizing inch, until there was enough space for the boy to scramble free. "Run!" she shouted, and he obeyed. The ceiling groaned. Ilara released the beam and dove for the stairs, just as the entire upper floor collapsed behind her. She hit the ground outside, rolling through dirt and ash as the house became a funeral pyre behind her. The boy was already in his sister's arms, both children crying with relief. The villagers erupted in grateful cheers, and Drakorian stood, watching with an expression that might have been approval or recognition, or something else entirely. "You risked your life for strangers," he said when she approached, coughing smoke from her lungs. "For people who would likely have feared you if they knew your full heritage." "Why? Because they needed help," Ilara said simply. "And I could provide it." "That's reason enough." Drakorian's smile was warmer this time, less predatory and more genuine. "You have the heart of a true protector, Ilara. That's rarer than you might think, especially in these times. My offer stands, and I'll add one more promise. Serve in my court, and I will ensure these villagers and their neighbors receive the protection they need. You'll be saving more than just one child." Ilara looked at the grateful faces surrounding her, at the hope dawning in their eyes. She thought of Ethelmore, of the clan who had cast her out, but who would soon face an army they might not be able to stop. She thought of her mother, who had loved her despite everything, who had died protecting her, and she thought of herself, of the life she'd been living, always running, always hiding, always less than she could be. "I'll come," she said. "But I have one condition. When war reaches Ethelmore, regardless of how they treated me, you help defend them." Drakorian extended his hand, scales briefly flickering across his skin before disappearing again. "You have my word, spoken as Dragon King. Their sins against you will not condemn them to slaughter. We defend those who cannot defend themselves, even if they don't deserve it." Ilara clasped his hand, and power surged through the contact. Ancient magic recognizing something kindred, perhaps. or simply two outcasts acknowledging each other across the divide of species and circumstance? Then let's go, she said. Show me this fortress of yours, and teach me how to stop holding back. Drakorian's grin was fierce and approving. With pleasure. But I warn you, embracing your full nature will change you. There's no going back once you accept all of who you are. Good, Ilara said, surprised by the conviction in her own voice. I'm tired of going back. It's time to move forward. Drakenfell rose from the mountains like a challenge to the gods themselves. Carved from black volcanic rock and threaded with veins of gold that pulsed with draconic magic, the fortress seemed alive, breathing in time with the ancient power that dwelled within. Ilara stood at its gates, feeling impossibly small yet strangely welcomed. The fortress didn't judge her. It simply was, as indifferent to her mixed blood as the mountains themselves. Welcome to your new home, Drakorian said, his hand briefly touching the small of her back, a gesture that sent unexpected warmth through her. Over the 2 days, we leave at first light, Drakorian said. I gave you my word and I keep my promises. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I'm curious to see the looks on their faces when the half-blood they exiled returns as my champion. That night, Ilara couldn't sleep. She lay in her quarters, the finest room she'd ever occupied, and wondered what she was really doing. She was leading an army to save people who had shown her nothing but contempt. Was it foolishness, nobility, or simply an inability to let go of the hope that someday, somehow, she might be enough for them? A knock at her door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Drakorian stood in the hallway, no crown, no armor, just a man who looked as unsettled as she felt. May I come in? She nodded, too surprised to speak. He entered and closed the door behind him, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other in the firelight. I need to tell you something before tomorrow, Drakorian said, because if I don't, I might lose my courage, and dragon kings are not supposed to be cowards. He took a breath, and she saw vulnerability in those golden eyes for the first time. When I first saw you in that village, standing defiant while covered in the blood of your enemies, I felt something I haven't experienced in 2 centuries of life. Recognition, not just of a skilled warrior, but of a kindred spirit. Drakorian, Ilara whispered, her heart hammering. I'm not good at this, he continued, speaking faster now, as if afraid he'd stop if he slowed down. I am a king, a dragon, a creature of fire and ancient magic. I'm not supposed to feel uncertain, but with you I am, because what I'm feeling is more than respect or admiration. I'm drawn to you, Ilara, to your strength, yes, but also to your compassion, to the way you save children from burning buildings, even when you have nothing to gain, to how you fight for people who wounded you, simply because it's right. Ilara's breath caught. I'm saying that I want you beside me, not just as a warrior or advisor, but as my equal. My queen, if you'll have me. I know it's sudden. I know you have every reason to doubt the intentions of someone in power. But I swear to you, on the ancient fire that burns in my blood, this isn't about politics or strategy. It's about you. Just you. She should have been shocked. Should have needed time to think, to process. But standing there, looking at this powerful, lonely king who had given her everything her own people had denied, Ilara felt only certainty. I've spent my entire life being told I was too much or not enough. Too orcish for the elves, too elven for the orcs. But you look at me and see someone complete, someone worthy. How could I not love you for that? The word hung between them. Love. She'd said it without thinking, but she realized it was true. Somewhere between the training sessions and the late-night conversations, between his unwavering support and his complete acceptance, she'd fallen in love with the Dragon King. Drakorian closed the distance between them, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. Say it again. I love you, Ilara repeated, her voice stronger now. I love your fierceness and your kindness. I love that you built a kingdom for the forgotten. I love that you make me feel like I can be everything I am without apology. He kissed her then, and it was like being consumed by dragon fire in the best possible way. Passionate and intense, but also tender, reverent. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Drakorian rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow we save your people, and when we return, we'll plan a wedding that will make every kingdom in the realm take notice. They'll have no choice but to accept you, because you'll be the Dragon Queen, and Dragon Queens bow to no one. The approach to Ethelmore felt surreal. Ilara sat astride a massive war drake, a smaller cousin to dragons, with Dracorian flying overhead in his true form. Behind them marched 500 of the finest warriors Drakenfell could offer, a deliberate show of force meant to intimidate the Shadowfang horde and impress upon the elves exactly who they were dealing with. The Orcish army had already engaged the Elven defenders when they arrived. The sacred groves burned, and the screams of the dying mixed with war drums in a symphony of horror. Ilara's hands tightened on her weapons. A pair of enchanted blades Dracorian had commissioned specifically for her fighting style. "Remember," Vezrin said from beside her, the Elven captain's face grim with determination. "We're not here to prove anything to them. We're here because it's right. Whether they appreciate it or not is irrelevant, but Ilara knew the truth was more complicated. She was here because some small part of her still hoped that by saving them, she might finally earn the acceptance she'd craved as a child. It was foolish, probably, but hope was a stubborn thing. Dracorian's roar shook the sky as he descended, dragonfire scorching a path through the Orcish ranks. The Shadowfang warriors scattered in panic, their brutal confidence evaporating in the face of true draconic fury. Ilara and the Drakenfell forces charged in behind him, a coordinated assault that turned the tide of battle in moments. Ilara fought like a force of nature. Every lesson, every moment of training, every ounce of her hybrid strength poured into devastating efficiency. She saved Elven warriors who had once mocked her. She stood between innocent civilians and Orcish axes. She was everywhere at once, a whirlwind of protection and controlled fury, and the elves noticed. How could they not? The half-blood they'd exiled now stood as their salvation, fighting with a skill and power that put their greatest warriors to shame. High Priestess Silverin herself watched from the steps of the temple, her expression a complicated mixture of shock, shame, and reluctant admiration. The battle lasted 3 hours. When the last of the Shadowfang horde retreated or fell, an eerie silence descended over Ethelmore. Dracorian landed beside Ilara, transforming back into his human shape, and the Elven survivors stared at the pair of them with something approaching awe. "You came back," Silvarin said, descending the temple steps slowly. She looked older than Ilara remembered, more fragile. "After everything we did to you, you came back." "I came back because people needed help," Ilara replied, too exhausted for false diplomacy. "Not because I've forgiven what you did, not because I've forgotten the stones and the insults and the exile, but because children like I was shouldn't have to die for their elders' prejudices." Shame flickered across Silverin's face. Around them, other elves gathered, listening. "We were wrong," the High Priestess said, and the words clearly cost her. "I was wrong. We let fear and tradition blind us to the worth of one of our own. Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become, Ilara, far prouder than we deserve." Tears stung Ilara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "My mother is dead because she spent her life trying to protect me from your cruelty. Don't invoke her name to make yourself feel better about past sins." "No," Silverin agreed quietly. "We don't deserve absolution, but perhaps we can earn the chance to be better. You've proven that strength comes in many forms, and that honor isn't determined by blood purity. If you'll allow it, we would..." Later, Ilara stood in the sacred grove beside her mother's grave. Someone had maintained it, she noticed. Fresh flowers bloomed around the simple marker, and the grass was neatly tended. She knelt, placing her hand on the cool stone. "I hope I made you proud, Mother," she whispered. "I tried to be what they wanted, but I couldn't. So instead, I became what you taught me to be. Someone who fights for others. Someone who doesn't apologize for existing. Someone strong." Dracorian appeared beside her, his presence a warm comfort. "She would be very proud," he said softly. "As am I. You faced your past without flinching and came through it stronger. That takes rare courage. I couldn't have done it without you." Elara admitted, standing and leaning into his embrace. You gave me the foundation to be brave, the certainty that I have somewhere to return to no matter what, always, Dracorian promised. You are my queen, my heart, my match in all things. Where you go, I follow. What you build, I protect. Who you are, I cherish. They married 3 weeks later in a ceremony that united multiple kingdoms. Elara wore a gown that combined elven elegance with orcish warrior aesthetics, a perfect representation of her dual heritage. Dracorian stood beside her in his full regalia, crown gleaming. But his eyes held only warmth and love. Representatives from Ethelmore attended, including Silverin, who presented Elara with her mother's journal as a wedding gift. She would want you to have this, the High Priestess said. To know her thoughts, her hopes for you, and to understand that you were always loved, even when we failed to show it. The journal became Elara's most treasured possession. In it, Isildea had documented her love story, her struggles, and her dreams for her daughter. The final entry, written days before her death, brought Elara to tears. My darling Elara grows stronger every day. She will face hardships I cannot prevent, rejection I cannot shield her from. But she has a warrior's heart and a survivor's spirit. One day she will find those who see her true worth, and she will shine so brightly that even those who scorned her will have to acknowledge what they lost. I only wish I could be there to see it. You are, Elara whispered to the memory of her mother. In everything I do, you're there. As Queen of the Dragon Realms, Elara transformed Drakenfell into a beacon of hope for outcasts across the lands. She established policies that welcomed refugees, protected the vulnerable, and celebrated diversity rather than fearing it. Her court became legendary for its fairness and its strength, a place where anyone could find belonging, regardless of their background. Dracorian proved to be not just a devoted husband, but a true partner in rule. They complemented each other perfectly, his ancient wisdom balanced by her empathy, his fierce protection enhanced by her strategic mind. Together, they forged alliances that had seemed impossible, uniting kingdoms that had warred for generations. On their first anniversary, as they stood on the battlements of Drakenfell watching the sunset, Dracorian pulled Elara close. Do you ever regret it? Accepting my offer that day in the village? You could have chosen a simpler life, Elara laughed, the sound full of genuine joy. Simpler, perhaps, but emptier, certainly. You gave me more than protection or a crown, Dracorian. You gave me permission to be fully myself, every part of me, without shame or apology. That's worth more than any simple life. Then I am content, Dracorian said, kissing her forehead. Because you, my fierce queen, gave me something just as precious. You reminded me that power isn't just about strength or fear. It's about using what you have to lift others up. You taught me that a kingdom's true measure isn't in its armies or treasures, but in how it treats those who have nothing. Below them, the fortress buzzed with life. Training yards echoed with the sounds of warriors from a dozen different races sparring together. The great hall prepared for another feast, where humans and fae would share tables with reformed raiders and former exiles. Children played in the courtyards, half-breed and pure-blood alike, knowing no distinction between them. We built something beautiful, Elara said softly. Something that shouldn't be possible according to every rule we were taught. And yet here it stands. Here we stand, Dracorian corrected. Together, as we always will. Years passed and the legend of the half-blood queen grew. Bards sang songs of how she had been cast out by her own people, only to rise as one of the most powerful rulers in the realm. Children who didn't fit the molds of their societies heard her story and found hope. Outcasts across the lands made pilgrimages to Drakenfell, knowing they would find acceptance within its walls. Elara never forgot where she came from. She visited her mother's grave every year, bringing flowers and stories of all she had accomplished. And sometimes, when the wind whispered through the sacred grove just right, she could almost hear Isoldea's voice telling her how proud she was. The elves of Ethelmore changed too, slowly but surely. Inspired by Elara's example, They began questioning their rigid traditions, opening their borders to those they had once shunned. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a beginning. And Silverin, in her final years, devoted herself to recording the true history of Isoldea and Ilara, ensuring that future generations would know the cost of prejudice and the power of acceptance. On a winter evening 10 years after her coronation, Ilara stood in the nursery of Drakenfell, holding her newborn daughter. The child had her father's golden eyes and her mother's mixed heritage, written in every perfect feature. She would be both dragon and elf and orc and human, a living symbol of unity. What will we name her? Drakorian asked, his voice soft with wonder as he gazed at his daughter. Isolde, Ilara said without hesitation. After the woman who loved without limits and taught me that being different isn't a curse. It's a gift. Drakorian smiled, tears glistening in his ancient eyes. Perfect. Our little Isolde will grow up knowing she is loved for exactly who she is. She'll never doubt her worth or her place in this world. No, Ilara agreed, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. She'll grow up knowing she can be anything. A warrior or a scholar, a diplomat or a dragon rider. She'll choose her own path, and we'll support her every step of the way. The baby cooed softly, and in that moment Ilara felt a profound sense of completion. She had been the outcast, the unwanted, the one who didn't belong anywhere. But through courage, love, and the willingness to embrace every part of herself, she had found not just acceptance, but triumph. She was no longer the half-blood girl, huddled at the edge of the sacred grove, watching her world crumble around her. She was Ilara, queen of the dragon realms, beloved wife, devoted mother, and champion of the forgotten. She was